Imagine you have exactly $10 million sitting in your bank account right now. For most people, that sounds like the ultimate finish line. You'd think you would finally be able to wake up, breathe deeply, and feel completely safe, right? But neuroscience has a cold, hard, and deeply unsettling answer for you. Even with that money, there is a very high probability that you would still feel anxious, restless, and plagued by a sense that you don't have enough. It sounds impossible, but it's a reality for millions of people. Why is it that our brains are so incredibly bad at feeling rich? Why do we stay trapped in a mental state of poverty regardless of the numbers on the screen? Today, we are going to hunt down the culprit that has kidnapped your peace of mind and forced you into a state of perpetual hunger. We are going to look at the wiring of your scarcity brain circuit. To solve this mystery, we have to travel back 10,000 years to the African savannah. Back then, your ancestors woke up every single morning with one primary question: is there enough food for me to survive today? If the answer was no, it didn't just mean a bad mood, it meant death. For almost all of human history, scarcity was the single greatest threat to our existence. Because of this, our brains evolved to trigger a massive internal alarm the moment we feel like we are lacking something. The problem is that while you are living in the year 2026, your brain is still running on an operating system designed for the Stone Age. Your fridge might be full of food and your bank account might be growing, but your brain is still scanning the horizon for lions and empty berry bushes. You find yourself asking, what if I fall behind? What if I lose everything? These thoughts don't happen because you are weak or ungrateful. They happen because your hardware is working exactly as it was designed to. Your brain was never built to make you happy or satisfied. It was built to keep you alive. In the wild, satisfaction was dangerous. The ancestor who felt they had enough stopped hunting, stopped gathering, and eventually they didn't survive the winter. Your anxiety is a survival mechanism that has outlived its usefulness. When this survival mechanism kicks in, something terrifying happens in your head. I call it the hijacking of the CEO. Your brain has a part called the prefrontal cortex, which acts as the logical CEO. It handles strategy, long-term planning, and rational thought. But tucked deep inside is the amygdala, your primitive security guard. The moment your brain detects scarcity, the amygdala pulls a coup d'etat. It screams at the CEO to sit down and shut up. It floods your system with stress hormones and demands that you fill the gap immediately. This is why when you feel behind in life, you can't think straight. You are no longer being led by a strategist. You are being led by a panicked security guard. Psychologists call this the tunneling effect. Think about it. When you feel a sense of lack, your vision literally narrows as if you are inside a dark tunnel. You can no longer see the big picture. You can't see the 99 blessings you already have because your brain is obsessively scanning for the one thing you don't have. It turns that one missing piece into a giant monster that consumes your entire reality. Have you ever noticed that no matter how much you earn, there's always that one thing you still can't afford? That's the tunnel. Your brain is scanning for the gap, not the gain. But what is the trigger for this gap? Is it about how much you actually have, or is it about what someone else has? This brings us to the most dangerous trigger for the scarcity circuit: relative deprivation. In a primitive tribe, your status determined your share of the resources. If your neighbor had more meat, it meant you were lower in the hierarchy and your survival was at risk. Today, when you open your phone and scroll through social media, your brain thinks it's in a tribal hierarchy competition. You see a stranger's vacation or their new car, and your brain doesn't see a pretty picture. It sees a threat to your survival. Every minute you spend scrolling through the highlight reels of others, you are feeding a virus into your scarcity circuit. Your bank balance hasn't changed, but your brain now interprets your life as a state of neurological poverty. You feel poor because your primitive brain thinks you've lost your status in the tribe. This is the tragedy of the modern age. We live in the most prosperous time in human history, but we feel more deprived than ever before because we are constantly comparing our behind-the-scenes footage to everyone else's best-of reel. Your prefrontal cortex knows it's a lie, but your amygdala is already in a state of panic. The cost of this mental state is higher than you think. It actually makes you less intelligent. A famous study from Harvard University found that being in a state of scarcity, whether it's a lack of money or a lack of time, reduces your cognitive capacity by 13 IQ points. That is the equivalent of losing a full night of sleep. When your brain is busy worrying about what you don't have, it uses up all its RAM. You lose the ability to think strategically. You start making short-sighted decisions. You chase small, immediate rewards and miss out on long-term wealth opportunities. In a cruel twist of fate, the more you feel poor, the more likely you are to stay poor, because your brain simply cannot afford to think like a rich person. So, are we doomed to live in this perpetual hunger? Not necessarily. The human brain is incredibly plastic, which means you can actually rewire these circuits. The first step is simply recognition. You need to name the hijack as it's happening. When that wave of "I'm not doing enough" or "I don't have enough" hits you, stop and tell yourself, "My amygdala is sounding a Stone Age alarm for a modern problem." This simple act of observation pulls the power away from the primitive brain and hands the keys back to the CEO. You aren't your feelings. You are the one observing them. The second strategy is to move from an accumulation mindset to an operating mindset. The scarcity brain is obsessed with hoarding because it thinks a bigger pile of resources equals more safety. But true wealth, both mental and physical, comes from the flow of resources. When you shift your focus from "how much can I get" to "how effectively can I use what I have," your brain exits the defensive survival mode and enters the expansive growth mode. This is how the most successful people in the world actually think. They view money and time as tools to be used, not just trophies to be guarded. When you stop treating your resources as a life raft, you can start treating them as a vessel for growth. Finally, you must reclaim your internal comparison. From a neurological standpoint, comparing yourself to others is like drinking salt water to quench your thirst. It only makes the craving worse. Instead, retrain your brain to focus on internal growth. What did you learn today that you didn't know yesterday? How have you grown compared to the person you were a year ago? When you provide your brain with evidence of internal growth, it satisfies the biological need for status without the toxic side effects of external comparison. Scarcity is not a financial status, it is a neurological interpretation. If you have everything but your brain says it isn't enough, you are poor. But if you have the ability to recognize your own growth and move strategically, you are already wealthier than most billionaires. Your value is not determined by the number in your bank account. It is determined by the sovereignty you have over your own mind. Don't let a primitive program from the savannah dictate your happiness in the modern world. You were designed for more than just surviving. You were designed to thrive. Start reprogramming your hardware today. Break the invisible chains of scarcity and unlock the true potential that has been waiting inside your brain all along. If this deep dive helped you understand your internal hardware a little better, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the Wired Human channel. We will continue to provide you with the most advanced neuroscience and psychological strategies to optimize your life. Your brain was designed for greatness. You just needed the instructions. I'm the Wired Human. Stay strategic.